Next up, Dr. Robert Owens, constitutional scholar, holds a PhD in organizational leadership, a master's degree in history and religious education, bachelor's degree in history and religious education. He writes a weekly column of political, social commentary, which is published in hundreds of print and online magazines. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. I've got one thing that most people with that alphabet after their name don't have. I spent 20 years painting houses before I got any of them, which gives me a little bit more different perspective than a lot of people with that same education have. It's late in the day. You are still here. I guess you're not the summer soldiers. And so I want to do one thing. First, I want to tell you I came here from Virginia for no other reason than to be here today with you. And I want to tell you how much this encourages me. When I come and I see people who are willing to give up the first beautiful day of the year, maybe, I don't know how it is up here, but it's a beautiful day, give up this beautiful day to come to be together with each other, to hear people speak about freedom and liberty, and to maybe find a way that we can get back to it. So I want to tell you how much you've encouraged me, and I want to show you how much you've encouraged me, because I want to be here to encourage you. And I want to talk to a select group, just a select group. May not be everybody here, I don't know. I want to talk to Americans. We got any Americans here today? Hey, there's a couple here. What do you know? Because I want to talk to Americans. Because we can hear all day long. You can turn on the TV and it's wall to wall what's wrong. You can talk to, you go down to the post office, stand in line at the Walmart, and everybody's talking about, man, the prices went up. Oh Lord, what's going on? How are we going to do it? What the grandkids going to do, right? The problems are easy to see. It's the solutions we're all looking for. But I have hope. And I want to share that hope with you. And it's easy to do because you're the hope. The American people are the hope. This problem, all these problems we have, they can be overwhelming. I mean, they're spending us, man, we're not even going to be able to afford to go to the poorhouse. They're going to have to lease out the poorhouse. We don't have anywhere to go. But we can solve this problem. The American people have faced up to problems from our very beginning. Stop and think about it. Back in 1776, it was a world that was filled with people who believed in the divine right of monarchy. They believed there were people endowed by God with the ownership of countries. I mean, the King of England owned England. If you had anything in England and he wanted it, he could just take it. The King of France, and all these kings, divine right. And our ancestors stood up and they said, all men are created equal. And they are endowed with what? Unalienable rights from who? Their creator, not from some king. And then we stood up, 13 little colonies just hanging on the east coast of this continent, and we stood up to the greatest military power of the day. And you know what we did? And you guys know, up here everybody fought, down in Virginia everybody fought too. We fought and fought and fought. You know what we did? We lost and lost and lost. They had a bigger army, they had the biggest navy in the world. They sailed anywhere they wanted to, dropped their troops off like out of a helicopter today, any place they wanted to, and won just about every battle they fought. We won some big ones. But you know the history. They beat us over and over and over again. What did we do? We hung on. They couldn't drive us out of the field. They couldn't make us give up. And after 8 long years, We won. The American people did it. There was a problem, and who had the solution? The American people had the solution. Then we became a country. And you know what we encountered? Our first taste of Islamic terrorism, the Barbary pirates. And the Barbary pirates were sitting there in what's now Libya and Tunisia, and they'd go out in the Mediterranean, they'd exact tribute from everybody. And I mean, they were pirates, just like we have today. And they'd exact tribute, and everybody paid it. The English paid it, the French paid it, everybody paid it. Well, when we became a country, just little old us, we're sending our ships out just trying to trade with people. They're trying to exact tribute from us. And the Americans rose up, and you know what we said? Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. We raised a little bit of a navy, put together the Marines and the Army, sent them over there, marched them across the desert, and we beat them. There was a problem, needed a solution. Who had it? The American people had the solution. War of 1812 comes, part of the Napoleonic Wars. Once again, we're fighting England, the greatest nation. They had a 1,000-ship navy. We had a couple ships, that's all. Once again, they came up and down our coast, went anywhere they went. They burned Washington, D.C. Come on now. I mean, they burned the White House. Yeah, can we call them back to it again? But I mean, when we fought, the only major battle we really won was after the peace treaty was signed down in New Orleans. But we stood toe-to-toe with the greatest power in the world, and we didn't get beat. There was a problem. The American people had the solution. Then there came the Civil War. Are you guessing by now? I'm a history professor. Well, okay, the Civil War comes, and you know what? Everybody in the world still had them divine right kings going out. And they figured, well, this is it. That old experiment with democracy is now working out too good. This whole thing's going to fall apart. And they stood back for your book, pick up the pieces. I mean, France couldn't even wait. They moved into Mexico and turned it into a protectorate. We fought, and we fought, and we fought. Matter of fact, when I walked in here today, somebody had a sign that said, New Hampshire, secede now. And I said, you know what, if you would have come with us in Virginia 100 years ago, we might not be here today. But anyhow, that war went on and on and on, fought for 4 years. Matter of fact, we killed more Americans in that war, because there's Americans on both sides, than we did in every other war we've ever fought. We killed more people in one day, more Americans in one day fell at Antietam than fell in the Spanish-American War, First World War put together. And we fought, and they thought we were going to be destroyed. But you know what? Our industry rose up. We came out with the first machine guns called Gatling guns. We came up with the first submarine that was ever used. We came up with the first ironclad that was ever used. We were the first ones to ever use rifled muskets. By the end of that war, the largest and most powerful army in the world was the Union Army, and the second was the Confederate Army. And when that war was over, we threw France back out, said, remember that Monroe Doctrine, don't you think about coming into the Western Hemisphere. There was a problem, and who solved it? The American people solved it. World War I came along. The Europeans bled themselves white. It might as well have been a suicide pact between both sides. They destroyed their culture and destroyed their civilization. And they fought to a stalemate until we came in. And we went over there. And we didn't come back till it was over there. And then, right or wrong, think about Wilson, whatever you want, the American people bought into the idea of a war to end wars. The American people bought into an idea we could do something to try and avert wars, and we tried. It didn't work. But there was a problem. We offered a solution. We fought the battle. We won the war. We tried to make it better. Second World War came along. Now the world's getting run by a bunch of dictators. And they're saying, well, America, the Western democracies, they're just decadent. You know, if we just kick in the door, the whole roof will come down on it. And guess what? They kicked in France and it came down. They kicked in all the other European democracies and it came down. They were kicking in England's and it was about to come down until some fool had the idea of kicking on our door, and we kicked theirs in until the roof came down on all our heads. There was a problem, and the American people came up with the solution. The communists rose up. Man, they're going to take over the whole world. We stood in their way. We fought battles from Korea to the Congo to Vietnam, and we stopped them. And then our economy and our strength as a people destroyed them. They disappeared in the night. Some of you in here, I remember there was a morning we woke up and there was a Soviet Union, and when we went to bed at night, there wasn't. There was a problem, we faced it, and the American people came up with a solution. So what's the problem now? Our government is spending us to death. Our government won't listen to us. What's the problem? We're facing a bunch of people who won't listen to us anymore. Isn't that it? Haven't you heard that over and over and over in here? Come on now. Half of you'd be home watching the game and the other half would be home working in the garden if it wasn't for us believing there's a problem. Well, that's where the hope comes in. There's a problem. But we're the American people. And if we will face a problem, we're going to solve that problem. But you know what? If we don't admit there's a problem, there's no chance of finding a solution. Now, you remember not too long ago that terrible tragedy happened out in Arizona where that congressman got shot, the judge got killed, and all those people got hurt. And you know, right after, of course, it turned out it was Rush Limbaugh's fault, and it's your fault, you know, and all you conservative crazies. You did it, even though the guy turned out not to be what he was. Well, okay, when they had to back off that because it turned out to be total nothing, then what was it? Well, we need more civility in our public debate, right? They're the ones who just attacked us with a bunch of lies, and now we need to have more civility in the debate. Well, I'm here to tell you, we do not need more civility in the debate. What we need to have is the great civil debate. It isn't a new debate. It's a rerun of an old debate. Matter of fact, it's a reprise of the original debate. The debate that we had about the ratification of the Constitution. You know, winners write history. The winners always write the history. For 200 years, we've been taught what a terrible failure the Articles of Confederation were, haven't we? I mean, in school we all learned that. It was so bad. Oh, you know, so we had to have another thing, right? It was so bad that the government constituted and instituted under the Articles of Confederation is the government that fought and won the Revolutionary War. It was such a failure that it's the one who established the United States as an independent country. It was such a failure that it got us recognized by every other country in the world as an independent country. It was such a failure that it set up all the rules by which every other state that was added to the Union followed to become a state. It was such a failure that the land laws that they set up are still followed in every state that's outside of the original 13. It was such a failure. Yeah, it had some problems. What happened was they called together a committee, and they said, what we want you to do is propose some amendments so that we can improve our confederation and make this a more perfect union. And that committee came together, and as our last speaker said, wasn't the one before, about working in secret. They came together, locked the door, and instead of writing amendments, they said, let's write a whole new deal and stick this out there. And they were men of such repute, George Washington, and men so highly held in regard that when they did this, it was accepted by many people. Matter of fact, we're still erroneously taught that the government under the Confederation ratified the Constitution itself and said, we approve of it, put it out for a vote. Unanimously. They didn't. Unanimously, they said they would not make a statement upon it. They would put it up for ratification. A plebiscite. Let the people vote. But then came the greatest debate in our history. The debate between the Federalists and what we call the Anti-Federalists. You know, back then they didn't call them that. Because the federal government at that time was the government under the Confederation. They called the people who were for the Constitution, you know what they call them? Nationalists. Matter of fact, if you read what we call anti-federalist papers, some of them are written by the Federalist farmer and the Federalist mechanic. Those were the anti-federalists that we call today. But federalism now has a good name, so it was appropriated by the winners. But that debate about what kind of a government we want, what do we want in this country, that's the debate we need to have. I mean, we're taught everything. Come on, we're a democracy. We need to study, are we a democracy or a republic? You know, right. We say, oh, our children are being taught wrong. We were taught wrong. We need to study our own history and learn, and then have the debate. We need to stand up, and this is what I'll tell you. I've been active in politics, as you can tell, I'm not, well, let's say, I've been in politics since I was 11 years old, and that's been a while. I worked my first campaign when I was 11 years old, knocking doors for Richard Nixon. And I'm proud to say that. And I worked over and over in the parties, and I was active in politics all my life, and I was studying politics all my life, and reading and studying. I just didn't have a chance to go to school until I was in my 40s. Doesn't mean I wasn't studying, and I wasn't working. And I got in this Tea Party thing when it first started down in Richmond. When we first started it up down there, I'm in the Patriot movement, and I've been going to all these meetings all over. I've been all over the country going to meetings, and it hit me last summer that if we don't realize we're talking about fundamental change here, not Band-Aids. If we don't do that, next year we're all going to be at another meeting talking to the same people, asking the same questions and saying the same things. I realized that last summer, and 6 months later it's still going on. So I started writing this book, The Constitution Failed. I knew the title would get a lot of people's back up. But you know what? If you took everybody who's been in this room all day long and get down to an ultimate level of what they say is wrong in this country, doesn't it all add up to that? You won't find a person in this room or who has been in this room who doesn't think the Constitution isn't a finer document than I do. I think it's the greatest thing that ever came from the hand of man. You know, no one in this room could ever say they think it was more of a success than it has been than me. I know it's created the atmosphere and the opportunity for the greatest country that's ever existed on the face of the earth. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't admit what the problem is, we don't have a chance for a solution. You know, and I keep coming back to, what are we going to do? I know it. Let's pass an amendment that says, follow the Constitution. Right. And then the Supreme Court gets to interpret that. I wonder what it means when they're done. It means, oh, the Constitution means anything we say it means. The same thing they came to last time. Or I know, wait a minute, here's a better idea. I got a better idea. Why don't we all get together and we'll work really hard and sacrifice all our time and put our money into it, and we'll elect a whole bunch of new conservative guys, and they can go to Congress, and as soon as they get there, they can re-elect the same Republican leadership they had last time, and then they can reaffirm the Patriot Act and start boosting the debt ceiling every other time we turn around. Yeah, that's going to work out great. Okay, I'm back to bringing you down. Let's get back to some of that hope. Here it is. We're the American people. If we face a problem, we'll find a solution. But if we don't face it, we have no chance. Because the game will just keep getting played and played and played, and we're going to get played. Because matter of fact, I had somebody in here just today tell me about how they poured their heart out working to get somebody elected. They went up there, and the first thing they did was vote to reaffirm the Patriot Act. And when they came back, they said, "What did you do? We even talked about that when you were running. I mean, how could you possibly do that?" And he said, "Well, when I got up to Washington, I found out a lot of things that I didn't know, and I just did what I thought was best for the country." Right. I'm sure that makes sense on some level to someone. But the fact of the matter is, the next person we pick, will we elect them, and they go there, and how many more years do we have? How many more? You think this is going to keep going? Well, at least it'll last as long as I'm here. You think so? We've got to do something. And we've got to do something seriously. And so, okay, I offer it here in this book. What it does, I take current events and I put them in historical and constitutional context. In each article, I call them dispatches from the history of the future, because current events are the history of the future. And they're only about 2 or 3 pages long. Now, my publicist tells me I should never say this, but it's a great bathroom book. You know, I mean, come on, how many authors will tell you flat out, I write toilet literature, you know, but I mean, it's great. You take it, it works out, 2 or 3 pages every, and you know, you can all sit there acting pious like, I don't read in there, but we know what's going on. But you take these things and you take current events, you look at what's going on, and if you put it in that historical, in that constitutional context, and you just follow what's happened in the last 2 years, our Constitution has become toilet paper to the people who are living in Chicago on the Potomac. When they will get on national television, and now people ask them, say, well, where in the Constitution do you find authority to do that? And they'll just laugh and say, well, most of what we do isn't have anything to do with the Constitution, and that's a quote from a Sunday morning news show. When you ask the Speaker of the House, well, where do you find the authority in the Constitution? And she laughs and says, are you serious? And that's a quote from our Miss Pelosi. When we are at the place where our own president has an interview and he says he believes the Constitution is a living, breathing document. We all know what that means, don't we? They can change it without amending it any time they want to by regulation and interpretation. And if we have come to a place where this document, which was written, now remember, the Constitution was written for what purpose? To establish and maintain a limited government. If we have an unlimited government, how can any honest person stand here and say it's a success at the moment? I'm not saying it's been a failure forever, and I never would, because it hasn't been. But we're talking about now. And that's the situation we have to face. We're not talking about what the situation Mom and Dad had, the situation our aunts and uncles lived with, We're talking about the situation we are dealing with and that we're going to have to hand on to our children and grandchildren. And if we don't face up to the reality of the situation, you know what we're going to hand them? Sand that's sifted through their hands. I ran for office myself. I never wanted to do it. I worked in many campaigns from Nixon to Reagan. I worked in campaigns, got guys who nobody ever heard of elected. And I finally ran for office myself once. In a gerrymandered district, knew I didn't have a chance, put my heart and soul into it, and gave it a shot. For one reason. If someday my grandchildren are living in a third world hellhole that used to be called the United States of America, I didn't want to look in their eyes and say I didn't do anything to try and stop it. And I know that's why each one of you gave up this beautiful day to be here, to be educated, to meet others of like mind, and to prepare for the future. And I'm telling you right now, I believe it with everything in me, that the first step into that new future is to admit what the problem is so that we can find a solution. And back to that hope. We are the American people, and if we face a problem, we will find a solution. God bless you all.